our lives. And one of the best ways I realized to explain this is I was coming up to this month, I was really racking my brain a little bit because I was trying to figure out divine order. Holy moly, that's a big topic. And all of a sudden I realized in my meditations, like, hello, you're starting foundations class, go back to the basics of what we teach. And I realized that we hadn't really together on Sunday mornings gone through our statement of belief. And so we're looking at what we believe as religious scientists, through the science of mind philosophy, and how that is real and relevant in our lives. I love the reading that Thelma did today because it talks about what we are trying to accomplish. You know, religious science was not started as a religion. It was started as a philosophy of living. It came up in the time when psychology really expanded, and it was known as spiritual psychology for a long time. It's a philosophy of living. It's a way of looking at who we are and where we fit in the cosmos. And I love that. I love that. It became a religion because we understood that in order for it to perpetuate itself, in order for the organization to continue beyond the lifespan of our founder, it needed to have the structures around it. And so that's why we are a religious organization. It's also because we know that at the center of all things is God. And so religious science, science of mind, centers for spiritual living, what we are is a bridge. It's a bridge to living spiritually. It's a bridge to let go of all the dogma and the rules. I'm in white linen after Labor Day. And the rules, right? To let go of all of those religious rules of control, because religion really was started to control the people. I don't really want to get into that as much right now. We could talk about that though. But the fact that religion was created to control, religious science was created to free us. This spiritual philosophy was here for us to become free. And what I love about it is that it's relevant. It's real. We put it into practice. It's not something we hope. It's not something we read about and stay in an intellectual capacity. This is something we pull into our being, we pull into our experience and can use. And that's why I'm so excited. I had 25 people in my foundations class this week, and I'm hoping that more people will join us if you're called to do it. Come on, we're having a great time. And because that's where we learn how to start to really put this into practice. We learn how to put ourselves in relationship to life and in relationship to God in a way that's going to free us. And so today my talk is to everything there is a season. What we realize is that the way that we relate to life determines the experience we have in it. We're coming up on the autumnal equinox this next week. I love that. I love saying that, autumnal equinox. We're starting to move into the fall season, and I can tell that because it's cool in the morning. I have one blanket on in the morning, you know, when I wake up, even though we're still in the liquid coconut oil season. Just so you know, officially, we're not quite there to fall yet, but all my friends who use coconut oil understand that, right? There's a solid, we have two seasons in Southern California. There's the solid coconut oil season and there's the liquid coconut oil season. And we're not quite into the solid coconut oil season. See, I knew I was talking to the right people today. I know, see, that's who we are. And so we know that fall is coming. It is coming. The other thing is that this is the time of the harvest. And both literally and figuratively, you know, this is the time where we harvest all of those things that we've been planting. And ironically enough, just because everything's so screwy in Southern California, I actually just planted 2 weeks ago. But my harvest will be a little bit later this year. But in general, this is the time of the harvest when all of our crops come into fruition, and it's a time of preparing for the coming winter months, for the darkness that comes. We go into that dark and in towards the holidays. I hate to tell you, the holidays are coming. Just breathe now, though, okay? But it's also a figurative time of the harvest, because we have started at the beginning of the year and with some intentions and setting out on this path, whether we're conscious of it or not. And this is a time when we are harvesting those intentions and those thoughts and those beliefs that we've been operating through for the first half of the year are coming into fruition. And so if there's something going on in your life right now, if there's some stuff happening, you got to realize that these are the plants that have been, the seeds that have been planted way earlier in the year, right? And so you may not like what you're getting, right? Anybody? Okay, yeah, you don't have to admit it. But you may not be as comfortable, just to yourself, you may not be as comfortable with what you're experiencing now. This is the harvest of what we've planted from the time coming. And so this is a time of awakening. It's awakening to see what it is that we're harvesting. It's awakening to see where we're at. It's an awakening. We're waking up to the fact that we have a part to play in this cycle of creation. And everything moves in its own seasons, right? One of the things that I love is that we learn so much. We learn so much from observing nature. Nature has its cycles. And as an expert novice gardener, as I am, I love that. Now, it's a little bit more complicated here in Southern California because everything's so much more subtle. The seasons, it took me about, I've been here 21 years next month, but it took me about 5 years to start to realize that there are subtle changes that happen season to season, and any transplant knows that it takes a little while to start to feel that or to see it. But everything moves in its own seasons. Now, the year moves in its own seasons. Our lives move in a great big season, right? And there's all these different cycles that come through. And it's a cycle of beginning, setting off, to begin, setting some intentions, beginning, then a period of growth and expansion, and then we come to a place of full realization, of full expression, of blooming, right? And then what happens after that? We bloom fully, and then things start to disintegrate a little bit. Things start to decay and disintegrate a little bit, start to fall apart maybe, and then we move into another recreation moment. So when we end a cycle, we begin again. And so so often we want to avoid that downwards part of the circle. We want to avoid that uncomfortable pulling apart or decaying or dying or whatever that is. We want to avoid that because we're not comfortable with it. But I want to remind us, and part of this to everything there is a season, is that is the beginning of the next cycle. The next cycle doesn't start after the death. The next cycle starts in the process of letting go of what has been so that you can begin again and start to welcome what's coming. That you can expand into a place to welcome something greater and something more. That's the whole idea that to everything there is a season. And it's true in nature. We can see it all around us if we wake up and watch it. It's true in our lives across our whole life, and it's true in the little seasons of the spirit and the seasons of the soul's experience, right? That there are certain things that happen, and they're not meant to last forever. And that's hard for us because, let's face it, as humans, we don't like change very much. I'll admit it. I don't like it. When I get in the groove of creation and expression and then moving into that blooming time, oh my God, I love it, it's great. But then when things start to shift and change, oh God, no way. I try to avoid that like the plague. But there's no life without that cycle. We can't exist without that cycle. And we can't grow or expand or become who we've come here to be without allowing that surrender, without allowing that letting go. It's part of who we are. We move in a rhythm. See, because we each are a microcosm of the macrocosm. That's one of our lingo ideas that we talk about here in religious science. That we are a microcosm of the macrocosm. And what that means is that each individual, each of us is a reflection of the greater cosmos. You know, the Hermetic teaching is that as above, so below, as within, so without. We are a reflection, a smaller version of the cosmos, of the universe. And so we have creative power within us because each of us is that divine emanation. Because we have the power of God. There's a divine spark, there's a divine seed, there's something, some piece of us all of us have been created by that powerful presence of God, but it's alive as us. There's something in there that is greater. And sometimes in our spiritual practice and in our meditation, we can connect to it and we can feel it. And that's the moment where we realize that we're not alone. That we realize that we are empowered, that we realize that we are worthy and cared for on a level that sometimes our human minds can't accept or can't see. And so, again, this month we're walking through our statement of belief and to look at it a little bit closer. Isn't that pretty? I found that this week. I thought it was so pretty. It reminds me of the seasons. I might print it out on my wall. So, all right, we're going back through the Declaration of Principles, and this week I'm going to jump back to the last one we talked about last week because I thought it was important to do twice. So we believe that heaven is within us and that we experience it to the degree that we become conscious of it. So I think it's important for us to remind ourselves of this one because it's a reminder that as we wake up to the divine truth of our being, as we wake up to our connection to God, as we deepen that relationship, we create our own heaven. Now, heaven isn't a place we're going to go to paved in gold. I'm sorry, it's not. It's not a destination point. Heaven is an experience. And it's an experience that Jesus taught us that we're supposed to have now. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. And the kingdom of heaven is within. And so as we align our consciousness, our knowing, our minds to that greater mind, to that presence of God, we experience heaven. And so that peace in knowing that everything's unfolding perfectly no matter what it looks like. That idea that we have all that we need and I don't need to worry tomorrow about making sure I have enough. That experience of deep, fulfilling, loving, sharing relationships. What is your heaven? Have you thought about that? What's the experience of heaven that you would have? Take a look around your life and see how you could connect to what that experience would be. Because that is what the divine wants you to have. The divine wants you to have heaven now. It doesn't want you to wait until this life, this body is done, and the idea that we're going to go somewhere and rest hereafter, I'm sorry, that's not part of the divine plan. Nature, life, God, everything is expanding constantly. And so the idea that we would live this life and we would suffer and then we'd go sit in a recliner in a mansion on a road paved with gold, it doesn't make sense to the rest of the context of life that we live and everything that's around us. We are going to be expanding as much out of this body as we are in this body. And the way you do life now, what do you think is going to change when you get out of this life? You're going to do it the same way. So any challenges or limitations or fears that you're operating with now, I encourage you to face them and look at them and relate to them differently. Let's get free now so that we can have freedom beyond now. The idea of doing our spiritual growth is a constant expansion. As a constant expansion is because we are constantly expanding. Life is a spiral. And we get a chance to spiral up or we get a chance to spiral down. If we spiral up, we're spiraling into a place of that freedom, of that peace, of that love, of that understanding that we're one with something greater. Or we could choose to spiral down, and if we spiral down, we're going to spiral down to a place of limitation. If we take all of those things that in the darkest part of our minds we hold about ourselves, that we're not lovable, that we're not worthy, that we're not good enough, that we're not capable, whatever those limited thoughts are that we hold on to, if we hold on to those, they slide us down like chutes and ladders, all the way down to a deeper place of limitation. But when we even just put our attention, if we just can move our sight to look the other way, away from our limitation, into the possibilities and into the power and the presence that's alive within us, we spiral up. We move into a place of freedom, and that's our heaven. You get to have heaven now. You can have it as you awaken to your connection to that divine mind that's operating within you. And this leads us to our next statement that I really want to talk about today. We believe that the ultimate goal of life to be a complete freedom from all discord of every nature, and that this goal is sure to be attained by all. Have you ever thought about what the ultimate goal of your life is? Have you ever had a moment where you thought about, wait a minute, what am I trying to accomplish here? Why am I here and what's this about? It's a powerful question for us to answer for ourselves. Because I think so many of us just fall into the line of life, right? That we have the experiences that we have and we fall into what's supposed to happen and we either do what's supposed to happen or we don't and we have consequences to that and we just get in this hamster wheel of the culture that we're in without waking up to, wait a minute, maybe I'd like to run around instead of just running in the same place. So what goal are you working towards? What goal have you been working towards? Is it a lot of money? Because you know you can't take it with you. Is it a lot of material possessions? Is it a being revered or adored? What is that goal that you've been working towards? Because each one of us has one. Each one of us has an idea. And that is what is motivating us forward. That is controlling our belief system and calling forth the experiences of our lives. The ultimate goal of our lives is an important thing to be in alignment with. Because when you awaken to why you're really here, you get to choose it. You get to set what your goal is. You get to be who you have come here to be. And when we step into that power, we step into that willingness, yes, I am. This is who I am. All of nature, all of the universe, all of the cosmos conspire for your freedom. It moves together to create experiences that's going to allow you to experience that freedom. We get to wake up to what we really want. And so according to Science of Mind and Ernest Holmes, the founder, our ultimate goal is to be free from discord. And so discord, as defined, is a lack of agreement or harmony. Conflict. And then particularly with sound, it's unpleasant and harsh. We don't like discord in our sounds, right? Or in our music. Some might call that Megadeth music, but I'm not judging. I was with the teens last week, and they were explaining to me about this whole new genre of music. I don't even remember what it was called, but there's this whole new genre of music that's like beyond, like death metal music. Like there's a step beyond that, and I was like, really? I was like, wow, I really am out of it, you know? I'm like, well, they're like, you want to hear it? I'm like, no. No, but maybe next month when I'm with you, somebody bring me something that maybe I could. So God bless it all. I know that it inspires someone, just not me. And so what this says to me when we look at the fact that our ultimate goal is to be free from discord is that there's a peace inherent to our living, a deep peace in knowing the rhythm of life, in understanding that we are part of the greater, and that everything that's happening is there to bring us to that place of freedom, is to help us step into that place where we can not let the little things bug us, that we cannot be stuck in this hamster wheel of creation and creating challenge and difficulty and lack and it being hard. Life has its challenges. Life has life, right? It's life. It's going to be life. There's going to be stuff that's going to show up. But it doesn't mean that it has to break us. It doesn't mean that it has to hold you back. Life is not trying to hurt you or to keep you down. Life's trying to free you. And everything that happens in our life is there to help us move to that place of understanding that we can be free. And the harder it's knocking at you, the closer you are. The harder that it is for you right now, you get to take a minute and say, yay. I know that sounds crazy, but say yay. Because there's something there right in the middle of that challenge that is the key to your awakening. That is the thing that is going to allow you to make that shift, to finally let go of that burden you've been holding on to, that negative thought process, that limiting self-idea that you've got, and step into your power, which is trying to break free from the inside out as life is trying to get you to break open from the outside in. Everything works for our freedom. And so instead of us fighting or trying to keep life at bay or trying to hide from it, I am one who likes to put the covers over my head at times. I will admit that. I don't do it for very long anymore because I know it's not going to help. I'll catch up on one of the shows that I'm binge watching. That's the only thing that it does. But it delays my understanding, it delays my growth, it delays my learning of what's really happening and what's really operating. And so as we face these things, as we step forward bravely to it, we allow ourselves to be guided and supported. The other thing that, the other piece of learning from this statement is that we are on that never-ending cycle of expansion and unfoldment that I talked about. That heaven isn't a place we end up, it's a place we create. We are here to create heaven on earth. It's not an end destination. And so there's always growth happening. And so we can think that we would get to our goal. Like if we're working on something in this life, what happens when you get there? You have to come up with another goal. It's the doorway through which we start the next evolution. And so sometimes I talk to people all the time, and sometimes I sit with people and they're like, well, I'm kind of afraid to get it. Because what happens when I get what I want? Well, you get more. Don't be afraid of that. You get to get more. Yes, it's a little bit of work because you have to set another vision. You have to set another goal. You need to allow yourself to expand and move into that place of what an expanded you would feel like. I used to think about it as upgrading. You know, I was here we go. I have this picture of there's three images in my head. There's the Russian stacking dolls. There's a starter home, medium home, dream home, right? And then there's my cars. I was a Toyota girl from the beginning. I started in a Tercel, and then I went up to a Corolla, and then I had a Camry. I was a Toyota girl. And so then I actually bumped it up. I got a Lexus, a SUV Lexus, right? And so it's like, okay, I think of that. Okay, that's what happens. What we do in life with the experiences that we have. We start with something that we think is appropriate for us, and then the next time, oh, let's expand it a little bit. Who am I? Are you allowing yourself to be in your expanded state, or are you still living in that small house with trying to fit your infinite presence in this tiny little house? Are you holding yourself back because you're afraid of what your greatness would be? That Marianne Williamson quote that everybody knows. We're not afraid we are afraid of our light. We are not afraid of our limitations. But when we have a deep relationship with God, there is no problem being related to our light. There's no worry that someone's going to think, oh, she's all stuck up in her ego, or he thinks he's all that in a bag of chips. Well, you know what? You are. You are all that in a bag of chips. And who cares if somebody in their limitation thinks that you are on your high horse? You are who you've come here to be. We get to own our greatness. We get to own our light. We get to know who we are. And we do that by having a deep relationship to God. We do that through our spiritual practice. We do that through seeing that this is a spiritual life unfolding. We do that because we are awake to the rhythms of life that are around us and operating through us. Science of Mind believes in an eternal and upward spiral of growth and expansion forever. We are always growing, always expanding. Jesus said, "In my Father's house are many mansions." And some interpretations of that statement is that he's talking about multiple dimensions. You know, all of these quantum physicists and scientists are talking about how there are multiple dimensions operating right where we are. And we just can't see it. They're right here. And so the idea of transition is not necessarily like an ending, of death as an ending. Transition is moving into a greater way of being. Who knows what that's going to be like? It's exciting. The Quran teaches that God has made many heavens, one on top of each other, which speaks to the process of evolution as eternal. And the Hermetic philosophy teaches that evolution happens consistently from the lesser to the greater. We are always getting better and better. We're growing in consciousness and expanding our understanding of ourselves as spiritual beings. So when we take that step into allowing ourselves to expand, the lesser falls away. And as we allow ourselves to get used to that place, we take another step and expand, and the lesser falls away. But we have to let the lesser fall away. One of the things that I see people do all the time is that when we take a step, when we create a new experience, we try to bring the past with us. But the past doesn't expand all the time. You do. And that's hard. It's hard for us to have that, to let go of that comfort of what we knew in the past, of the way that it was. It's hard to let go of the things that we love about it, or things that we find comfortable, or even things that are familiar that aren't necessarily that comfortable. You'd be surprised at how many people want to hold on to dysfunction from the past just because it's the dysfunction that they know. We get to let that go. We get to let it be and move into a place and welcome what it is that we're wanting to welcome. But we have to do that with a clear eye and a specific understanding. And keep our eyes on the prize. We have to keep that deep understanding and that deep relationship of God. The thing about it is that we're always getting better and better. We are part of this endless upward spiral. And there's no limit. There's no limit to where we can go with this. Now the challenge is this. We've got a choice. We've got a choice to live in alignment with the rhythms of our lives. We've got a choice to wake up to who we really are, or not. I can go back to bed and put my covers over my head if I want. But that's not going to stop this cycle of creation. It's not going to stop the cycle of life. I can pretend and fight against what's happening and try to keep it the way that it was in my little Tercel back in 1988 and hold on to that. That experience of driving around my hometown in my little car with no air conditioning and no tape deck. Who wants that? It was fun. But it was old, and it was limited. And I have grown into someone who doesn't want to have that life. You know it's not really about the car, right? I just need to get the Reverend told me I just need to get a better car. No, I'm not expecting you all to go out and buy big cars today. That's not what it's about. It's about growing into the life of where you're at and letting everything be that has been. We could live in rhythm we could live in alignment with the rhythms of this life, with the seasons of our life, with the seasons of the Spirit, or we could fight against it. Either way, we're living. And we're living fully, and we have a choice. Now the great news is this. The great news is that you can't. So this promise was that it's sure to be attained by all. Freedom from discord is sure to be attained by all. So what that says to me too is that you can't lose. So you could fight against it all you want, but life is gonna batter you till you open up. Life is gonna knock on your door until you open the door. Life and God, whatever you want to call it, is not going to allow you to live a small life when you have come here to be fully you. And it's going to break you open in a way. I always talk about God picking us up by the scruff of the neck and dropping us where we need to be, right? I've said it to many people in this congregation, probably on Sunday. Do I say it every week? I probably say it every week. But life is going to do that. It's going to pick you up and take you where you need to be. And so you can go kicking and screaming if you want. I don't suggest that. It's not fun. And this is supposed to be fun. Life is supposed to be fun. And I don't know if everybody says that. Do we believe that life has to be hard? It can be challenging, but still fun. We can still have joy in the midst of a difficult situation. I have laughed more at funerals than anywhere else. I have laughed and seen and experienced more love at memorials and celebrations of life than anywhere else. Because we are cracked open to realize what's real. And so as we bring that individually into our day-to-day lives and ask ourselves, what's real? We get to begin to experience that. So no matter what's happening, there's joy for you. No matter what's happening, there's support there for you. No matter what's happening, there's peace. Because you are part of the greater cycle of life. And so when we get stuck in those moments, we can see things are starting to disintegrate and we don't like it. When we can start to see that the fullness of our expression is moving into a place where we're going to have to let go of something that we have loved. I encourage us to move into that place of knowing that this is part of the cycle that's going to come around again. And so we move into a place of asking for support. We reach out to our practitioners. We read something inspirational. We get our butts into a class and learn how to see life in a new way, to align with that powerful presence of God. The ultimate goal, freedom from discord, is sure to be attained by all. It's the promise. It's the promise we've been given. It's the promise of God. It's the promise of life. And so we can fight it and delay it. But I want to remind us, it's not a race. It's not one that you win. You just do it in your own time. And when we compare ourselves to someone next to us or someone that we see in our lives, it's not a race. We're not here to beat someone and get there sooner. We're here to know who we are and to experience that deep peace that has been created as us. And so we have the ability to have everything we want in this life. We have the ability to create heaven on earth. We need to get clear about what that would be. We have to get clear about what that would feel like. And as we begin to create it, we realize that everything else aligns to it, because the God-ordained promise is that we will all be free. It's the nature of our being, and it is inevitable for each and every one of us. It just depends on how open we are to taking that first step. And so in this week, I invite you to take the step, because you deserve to be free. And so it is.